Welcome back, everyone. This is Ayad Boudiab, and we are continuing our Angular discussions. In the previous module, I basically talked about modules and services. I gave you an introduction to what services are, and I showed you how we can work with modules by basically taking the whole set of one file and trying to split it into different pieces, and that's very much needed when your application grows bigger and bigger. But I also discussed briefly the services that we work with. And as I said earlier, when I'm working with a specific service, I'm creating a component that can be reused in my application, right? I'm working with something, for example, that deals with, let's say, addresses, right? People's addresses, and I like to use that in multiple places. Then I move that into a service. It's a reusable function, right? And then when I work with modules, basically I'm creating something that I can reuse across multiple applications, right? So one time I'm dealing with a specific application within the organization. A few months later I move to another project. I can reuse that service in another application, and we'll go from there. So right now then, how can we create a service and how we can use that service? That's the purpose of today's video. Angular provides us with 3 different ways of working with services. We can use the factory to create a service, and we'll see that today. And also we'll work with the service and provider. These are 2 additional ways of creating a service. It's just different, syntactically different ways of creating services. But one thing that you need to understand is that these services are singleton, which means that they have only one service that's being created, not a different service every time you use it. So keep that in mind when you're dealing with services. So then I need to create a service using the factory, and then I need to use that service within my application. Right now I have a service module that you've seen before. This is the creates the directive, my current time, and you have seen that in a couple of videos at least, where it shows me the actual time. That's directly from the Angular website. And as I modify the formats, the actual current date time changes down here. Okay, so that's what the service is, the module that contains the directive and the controllers and everything. And then I need to create a service here using the factory, name it service-factory. I need to create the service here, and then you reuse that service over in my service module.html. Okay, let's go back here and start working with that. Now when I work with a service, I need to use a factory. So to start with, I need to use Angular .module to have a module, right? And then I will name that custom service. Okay, so far so good. Custom service, and this service, module, comma, square brackets, does not depend on anything else. Okay, having this module, I will tag a service to it, but using the factory, therefore I would say .factory. So Angular.module creates the module. It's a custom service module, does not depend on anything else, and then .factory to create that service. I'm going to name this one log service, and as the name implies, that basically logs stuff for me. Now one thing that you need to be aware of, that Angular already provide you with a log service. So normally you don't want to use the service that I'm using right now. This is just for illustration purposes on how we can create a service using a factory. But if you need a specific service that deals with logging, you need to use what's provided through Angular, and I'll show you that in the upcoming videos. So right now then, it's called log service, and that log service will have a function, and the function will be as follows. This is the body of the function, right? And let's close that with a semicolon. Now in here, the function is going to return for me something. It's going to return for me an object that has a log function. Okay, so functions within a function, or an object within a function, that's something you're familiar with when you're dealing with JavaScript. So in this case then, I need to return an object, and that object has a log function. So for that purpose, I would say return, and then here is the object that I need to return. So let's put in here in comments that we're returning an object, right? And then that object has a function named log. So log, colon, and that helped me define that function. Now let's define it. Function that takes a message and it logs that message. So this is the body of the function over here. Put in comments, log function. So then the log service defined using a factory is a function that returns an object. That object has a log function within it. So I can use the log to log some information. Now let's define that function. So we do console.log. So we're writing things into the console. And then something like testing the factory service with the message, and then let's put in here plus the message that has been passed to us. So that message is written here, right? Okay. Now that takes care, let's put semicolon, that takes care of the logging. So we're logging using the console.log. That would be the what you will see in the log, and then the log function within an object, and that's being returned by the log service. Save that. Now let's go back to the service module to see what changes that we need to provide in there. Okay. Alrighty. Now I have in here a custom directive app. That's the custom directive app module. I have in here the service, custom service module. Therefore, the one that I'm creating here should depend on what I have here. It's called custom service. So I can come to this side and I say that I am depending on custom service, right? Okay. Now, what's the name of this guy here? Service factory. I need to make this piece aware of this file. So I have to go over here and create a script tag, and then in here I would say that my source depends on the service factory.js. It is in the same folder, so I say service-factory.js. So I can save that. So now the service coming from here called custom service, when we load the script in here, it already knows about service factory, so it's going to know that this is the custom service that I'm relying on. In the controller, I have the controller that depends on that's using the scope by injection, and then it formats the data the way that I want it to. Scrolling down, I have a directive that's with the my current time, and then depends on that stuff. Now, within here in the scope, when I do watch the changes, I need to log the data. So over here, in scope.watch, I need to log the value. The value coming in, I want to log it. Now, I need to use something like this. Log service dot log, that's the name of the function, and I'm going to log the value, right? The log function is already defined within the log service, right? But all what I set up here is that I have the custom service coming in, right? It doesn't know yet what the log service is. That's the actual service that I created through the factory. So I have to come back here and remember that I'm using the logging, the log service through inside the directive. So I need to make this dependency somewhere here aware of this log service. So after the date filter that I'm dealing with, I need to tell it that there is a service that I want you to use called log service. It will depend on that log service. It will inject that log service, and then it makes it available within the directive. Now the directive can use it. You see that here, log service. But then there's one more thing, that in here when I define my function and I inject the log service, I need to give it a name, and here I will keep the same name as log service. Now the directive is depending on this. It can use that log service, right? It's being passed to us. It is part of the custom service module that was in here, and I made the main module custom directive app aware of the custom directive module by using that within the dependency in here in the square brackets. Okay, so provided the custom service from here, this is a module, and then within the directive where I'm using my log service, I passed in the log service and then give it the name so it can be used down here. Let's go ahead and save, and then let's just right click and open in browser, and then we need to see what we're missing, right? Because anytime something that like that doesn't load, we know that we make a mistake. So let's go back and figure out what that mistake is and make the fix. One thing that I can do when I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with my application is basically when I load it and I don't get anything, I can always go to the developer tools, right? So I can always go over here, tools, and load developer tools. It will show me the developer tools that I'm working with, and it shows me some mistakes down here. And I look at the top, it says uncaught syntax error unexpected token. So I'm missing it. I have an extra parenthesis somewhere, and then it says it cannot load custom service, right? It's missing, so this module is missing. So let's go back here. We know that custom service is over here, and I'm referencing the file, so it must be something over here. First of all, well, I misspelled Angular, didn't I? So in here we have Angular dot module custom service, and it depends on this. This is an extra parenthesis that they're talking about. So let's go ahead and save that, and then go back to the page and then open that in the browser, and now I see that it is being displayed, but where's the log, right? So make sure that you go to tools, developer tools, and you will see the developer tools here. You would notice that in the console I'm getting testing the factory service with the message mdyy and then so on, because this is the value that we're trying to log, right? Notice down here we're logging the value coming into the scope.watch. This is the attribute that we're dealing with, and then we're trying to log that into the console. So that's why you see that down here. Now if I make any changes, if I go back to the text box and I make any changes, you notice that this value is also logged as well, mm/d/yy. So we know that this is the logging is taking place through that service and being displayed in the console window. Okay, so what have we done today? We built a service. There are 3 different ways of building a service: factory, service, and provider. And we use the factory to create that service by returning an object that contains the function that we need. And then coming back to our original file, we need to make sure that we are referencing that service, and then we make sure that we depend on it, right? The main module depend on that module, and then we pass that service itself into the directive or into the controller depending on when we need it, and then we pass that in this case into the directive and use the services provided through that service. So I hope this discussion has been helpful to you. We are going to continue. We'll see how we can create a service using the service and the provider, just to see different ways of working with it, and then I'll discuss with you the existing services through Angular before we move into other subjects. Thank you very much for listening. I'm Ayad Boudiab, and you have a good day.